My husband and I have not been doing well lately. In fact, as I write this, I realized we hadn't been doing well for a while. We had our normal struggles, like every couple, but lately they'd turned from bearable differences to utter annoyances. It didn't help we work long hours away from each other now. I've been so busy drowning in manuscripts to edit since my promotion last year. I spend 70 hours holed up in the attic we converted into my office when we moved into this small town, editing other people's work, helping them achieve their dreams of publishing their stories, while I waste away here. We moved to this desolate farm home for his job. The university in the city had the best archaeology program, but the worst cost of living. We could only afford to buy a rundown farm outside of the city, and since I can do my job at home, I gave up my dream home we bought when we first married. He said it would only be for a few years, and then we could move back. I was beginning to think otherwise, as he spent more and more time at the school. He told me they found a potential dig site where they thought there would potentially be some huge discovery. I began to believe him less and less each time I smelled perfume on his shirts and found changes of clothes in his car. He started to call me crazy, told me the stories I'd been reading are getting to my head, that I spend too much time alone and should make some friends. But there is no one around to befriend, and he was supposed to be my best friend and support anyways. We had once shared a dream of writing a book based on his research and digs. It had been a long time since we talked about that dream. So when he told me he was going with his team to the site in another country to help them excavate what they thought was an undiscovered ancient tomb, I felt a ray of hope. I told him it would be a great start to our book, and he laughed at me. He told me the school would be publishing the findings in their own research paper, and his team would help him write it. I was hurt, but he told me to get over it and focus on my own work. He had grown tired of my hours, apparently. He said he never saw me anymore, and I felt like a stranger. In that moment, I realized I felt the same way. He told me he will be back in 3 months, and I told him I wouldn't be there. 3 months alone with nothing but my work sounded like hell. This wasn't the first time he struck me, if I'm being honest. He hit me a few times before that, whenever I brought up the perfume, or that time that I found another woman's panties in his car. This was the first time he broke something, though. I suppose it was my own fault. I had tried to crawl away, and I knew better. Just let him get it out of his system, I told myself. It's faster that way. But there was a look in his eyes that night that I'd not seen before. They burned with such hatred. I just had to get away. Maybe it was because I said I was going to leave. Maybe it was the beer he had with dinner. Either way, as I crawled out onto the enclosed porch, he took the door and slammed my leg in it. He brought me to the doctor the next day and I got a cast on. I said it was an accident, old farmhouse and all. I slipped on the stairs. No one thought any the wiser, since everyone in town thought my husband was going to put them on the map with his upcoming dig. He was going to be famous, and so were they. If I'm being honest, I'm sure he did it to make sure I couldn't leave. He went on his trip, and I stayed at the farm with my never-ending stacks of manuscripts. He called a few times to update me and let me know he scheduled an appointment with the town doctor to come and take my cast off. The day before he was scheduled to come home. The last time he called was to tell me they broke ground and expected to get into the tomb that week. I had heard the woman in the background calling for him to come back to bed on that call, and my silence told him so. I didn't hear from him the rest of the trip. I wish I could say I left then, but I didn't. I stayed, scared of when he returned, but even more afraid of what he would do if I left. How far could I really get in less than 24 hours? I have no family and no friends. He was the only person in my life. All I had was him and my work. The day the doctor came to take off my cast, I learned that they had found what they were looking for. Apparently, the whole town was talking about it. News crews were reporting the find all over the world. My husband was famous. I waited for him to come home the next day. He had taken the car to the airport and left it there, so I could not pick him up, he said. He would drive himself back. Again, I thought this was just to make me stay put. I heard the tires rolling down the drive, and my heart raced. I had made sure the house was spotless and dinner ready. His favorite, hamburgers. He rarely ate anything else at home. My work had to be done early today so that all my attention could be on him. I didn't hear his heavy footsteps as he came into the house, which was strange. Suddenly, he had appeared in the kitchen where I waited. I stood up, startled, and gaped at him. His hair was much longer, his face a bit gaunt. But it was his eyes that startled me. They seemed to burn as he gazed around the room, not with the anger or annoyance I was used to seeing, but with actual light. His gaze fell on me, and I felt myself becoming small. I had no idea what he was going to do now.
You made dinner?
He sounded surprised, hopeful. I nodded, and he smiled.
Oh, thank you.
I felt my knees go weak at the look on his face. It was far different from any other he'd ever given to me, and not once in our life together had he thanked me. We ate, and he asked about my day. We chatted, and I found myself becoming less and less tense. He had changed somehow, though I could not put into words how or why. That night, as we got into bed, I watched as he blushed when we got under the covers. He seemed nervous, almost boyish, as he wrapped his arms around me. I melted into his embrace, unlike any time before. Weeks went by like this, with the occasional visitor asking about the dig. TV crews came asking for interviews, and students came looking for support. Apparently, he had been offered a lot of money from the school, since one of these days he asked me if I would like to quit my job.
We can work on that book we always planned on doing. I found so much there, and I want the world to know.
I couldn't believe it. I hesitated and saw that he saw. I braced for his wrath, but only received his warmth. I eventually agreed, and we started working on our book. He gave me his findings and went over the dig. They had found the resting place of a lost pharaoh. They once thought he was just a rumor, a tale to tell kids at night. It was said he had been cursed, and if ever he was found, he would bring destruction to the land we walked on.
All superstitions,
he told me. All they found was gold and lots of ancient texts that hinted at what life was like back then.
These are the first texts we have found, intact and complete. They tell the real story. He wasn't cursed, but he had power beyond belief if he ever walked the lands again. He would rule, yes, but with benevolence.
I remember thinking to myself that most rulers thought that of themselves. I almost commented on it, but I saw the look in his eyes as he pored over the material, and I knew better. Let him believe the cursed king was nice, I thought. We spent months poring over the information, with him filling in the blanks every now and then. By the time we finished, I knew we had a prize winner on our table. I wanted to celebrate with a feast, but since we had spent so much time writing, we hadn't gone to the store in weeks. I scrounged around in the freezer and came up with some meat and vegetables to make a stew. We had so much meat now that he had stopped asking for hamburgers ever since coming home. More than I could even remember putting in there. I dumped everything in the pot and let it simmer for a while. The entire time, I couldn't help but think how happy I was now. Whatever had happened on his trip had been enough to change him. We even started talking about moving back to the city. I took a sip of my soup and smiled. Whatever I grabbed from the freezer tasted delicious. I spooned some into a small bowl to bring him to taste. And that's when I saw, floating among the vegetables, the finger. It looked shrunken and gray, but the ring around it was unmistakable. It was my husband's wedding ring. The one that he said he'd lost on the dig. I stood there, staring at it, until I felt him behind me. I turned to see him, his eyes burning as he saw what I held. I thought of my husband, my real husband, and the horrors I had been through. The loneliness, the pain, the abuse, and I shuddered. I thought of all the possibilities of what could have happened to my husband that would cause his finger to be in my soup now. And I felt nothing. The thing before me was waiting patiently to see what I would do. I plucked the finger from the pot, slipping the wedding ring off, and tossed the finger into the trash. I approached the thing that wore my husband's face and grasped his hand. Look what I found. And you thought you lost it on a dig. Here, dinner will be ready soon, I said, holding its gaze as I slid the ring onto its finger. It has been a few days since then, and we have not mentioned it to each other. I asked my husband to clean out the freezer and buy some fresh meat. Where he threw the contents away, I do not know, nor will I ask. Late at night, I often wonder what it looks like beneath my husband's skin. Oftentimes, I wonder if the flesh will infect the thing, and somehow my real husband will return like some kind of virus. On those nights, I lay awake, shivering in fear of the past and what could come if that happens. But always, the thing from the desert who wears his face holds me, and I know that I am safe, safer than I have ever been before. For now, the curse of the king stays with me and has not extended past my farm. For now.